The sink in her downstairs unit had been dripping for weeks. I heard it whenever I passed by, tiny, irregular notes against the quiet of the hallway. She must have noticed me glancing at her toolbox in the garage one evening, because the next morning, she just leaned on her doorframe and said, half smiling, "You're handy, right?" I wasn't. Not really. But saying no felt heavier than saying yes, so that's how I ended up kneeling on her tiled floor, trying not to stare at the way her sleeves were rolled up as she leaned against the counter, sipping coffee. She was older, mid-40s, maybe. The kind of older that made her presence feel steadier than the room itself. Divorced, I'd heard from another tenant. A quiet kind of divorced. Not bitter. Just, pared down, like someone who'd stopped carrying extra weight around. The wrench slipped in my hand. "I think it's the gasket," I muttered, though I barely knew what that meant. "You sound convincing enough," she said, not looking at me but at the steam curling out of her mug. I smiled, even though my hands were wet. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and just pretended not to. There wasn't much between us at first. Just small exchanges when I checked my mailbox or she watered the front porch plants. But in that kitchen, I realized how much space silence can take up. The kind of silence where you're suddenly aware of the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the wall clock, the way her gold bracelet clinked when she set her cup down. I didn't say anything, but my eyes flicked once, quick, toward her hands. She was twisting the ring she still wore on her index finger. Not a wedding band, something else. Habit, maybe. I bent back to the pipes. I'd been lonely lately. Not in the dramatic way you hear about, just in the quieter ways, a half-written text to someone I never sent, a coffee cup left too long in the sink, music playing low at night so the silence didn't feel like it was swallowing me. I think she carried her own version of that too, though we never spoke of it. "Need a towel?" she asked after a minute, noticing the water dripping onto my sleeve. "Yeah," I said. She passed it over, fingertips brushing mine in a way that felt more accidental than it probably was. I caught her eyes for half a second. They were tired, but not in a weak way, more like someone who'd stayed up late too many nights without regretting it. By the time I tightened the last bolt, the dripping had slowed. I leaned back on my heels, wiping my hands on the towel. "Fixed," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure it would last. She smiled, not the polite kind, but a real, small one that tilted her whole expression softer. "You might have just saved me a week of headaches." I shrugged, feeling suddenly self-conscious. "Happy to help." She walked me to the door, then paused as I reached for the knob. There was a beat, one of those quiet moments that stretches out, daring you to break it. She tilted her head slightly, considering me. "You know," she said, voice low but steady, "you're better at this than you think. Want to fix something else?" I blinked. My hand still on the doorknob. The silence after her words seemed louder than the storm outside. And that was the beginning. The next time I found myself in her kitchen, it wasn't because of a broken sink. She had knocked on my door with a folded box in her arms, asking if I could help carry a few things up to the attic. It was late afternoon, the kind of light that slips sideways through half-closed blinds. She led me upstairs, careful with her words, as if even asking had been a stretch. "This was my son's," she said, tapping the cardboard. "He didn't take it when he moved out. I keep meaning to go through it, but," her voice thinned, like the sentence had walked ahead without her. I nodded, shifting the box against my chest. Inside, I could hear something sliding, books maybe, or old photo frames. "I get it," I said, though I didn't, not really. When we reached the attic, she didn't turn on the overhead light right away. Just stood there, the box between us, dust, and I realized how little I actually knew her beyond polite exchanges and passing smiles. Her eyes lingered longer than necessary. Just a second, but enough for me to feel the gap between us, the years, the stages of life we didn't share. She had a son my age. That fact hung there, unspoken, between the dusty rafters. I cleared my throat, too quickly. So, he's moved out. Seattle, she said. Her fingers tapped the edge of the paperback. Feels further than it is. I nodded again, not knowing what to say. My chest tightened with a thought I didn't want. If I'd been born 10 years earlier, or if she'd been 10 years younger, would this silence between us feel less like a cliff edge? After a while, she closed the box and set it aside. We sat there in the quiet attic, drinking tea from mismatched mugs she'd brought up, steam curling between us. I wanted to tell her something, anything, that might meet the weight of what she'd given me. But all that came out was, my mom used to mark the page corners in every book. Drove me crazy. Her lips curved. Sounds like her. She passed when I was 15, I added, before I could stop myself. Her face softened, almost imperceptibly. She didn't say sorry. She just rested her hand on the floor near mine, close enough that the warmth of her skin reached me. We stayed like that, not touching, not moving, just breathing in the attic's faint cedar air. When she finally stood to leave, she brushed a bit of dust from my sleeve. The gesture was nothing, tiny, practical, but it felt heavier than anything either of us had said. It wasn't supposed to mean anything, the way I stopped by her place more often. Returning a package left at the wrong door. Asking to borrow tape. Small, harmless excuses. One evening, I found her in the living room with the window cracked, rain dripping steady outside. She was curled on the couch, glasses on, a paperback in her hands. "You read?" I asked, hovering near the doorway like I wasn't sure I should step in. She looked up, half smile. "Not as much as I used to." I sat down, not too close, but close enough that the edge of her blanket brushed my knee. The sound of rain filled the pause between us. Her phone buzzed on the table. She reached for it, then let it go without checking. I tried not to stare at the screen lighting up her name in bold letters, Ethan. Her son. "You don't have to stay," she said, soft, like she meant it but didn't. "I don't mind," I answered, even softer. There was a shift then. Small, but I felt it. The air heavier. My eyes kept catching on details I shouldn't notice, the way her hair slipped loose behind her ear, the thin gold chain at her throat, her bare feet tucked under the blanket. I leaned back, trying to look casual, but my chest was tight. She must have felt it too because she adjusted her glasses, cleared her throat. "You're young," she said finally. Not an insult, just a fact placed carefully between us. I nodded, even though the word carried more weight than it should. A knock at the door broke the silence. Quick, sharp. We both startled. It was her neighbor, Mrs. Carver, older, nosy, one of those people who always had time to comment. She leaned in with a casserole dish, eyes flicking from me to her and back again. "Oh," she said. "Didn't realize you had company." Heat crawled up my neck. I stood too quickly, muttering something about leaving. She took the dish, murmured thanks, her face unreadable until the door shut again. The moment was gone. But later that week, it came back. I was helping her bring groceries inside, hands brushing when we both reached for the same bag. The contact froze us both. Too long. Too much. She looked at me, direct this time. No avoiding. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something but thought better of it. I felt the words pressing at my own throat, dangerous and clumsy. "Maybe we shouldn't," she started, then stopped. My heart hammered. I should have said something, pulled back, made it easier. Instead, I stood there with the bag in my hands, rain dripping from the awning above us, both of us caught in the space between sense and want. She inhaled slowly, eyes flicking down toward my mouth, then back up. And for a second, just one, we were close enough that I forgot about age, about neighbors, about her son's name lighting up her phone. Close enough that everything else fell away. But the bag slipped in my hand, a carton shifting inside. She stepped back, quick, the moment collapsing under the sound. Neither of us said anything. We hadn't spoken much after the grocery bag slip. Days passed where our paths missed each other completely, though I could still hear the faint rhythm of her footsteps on the stairs, the sound of the kettle hissing in her kitchen. Then, one evening, she asked if I wanted to walk with her. Just that. No explanation. The air was damp, the kind that sticks to your skin even after the rain has stopped. We walked without touching, the narrow sidewalk making us fall into step anyway. She carried an umbrella though it wasn't open, tapping it against her leg with each stride. People notice things, she said finally, staring straight ahead. What do you mean? My neighbor. The casserole. Things like that. She paused. I don't. I can't have anyone misreading this. I nodded, though the word sat sharp in my chest. This, I repeated. Her umbrella tapped faster, like she was keeping time with something inside her. You're young, she added, almost whispering. And she cut herself off, exhaled. It's not simple. We reached a small park bench under a street lamp, its light buzzing faintly against the dark. She sat first, umbrella resting across her lap. I sat beside her, close enough to feel the warmth radiating through her sleeve. I don't want to make things complicated for you, I said quietly. She laughed once, dry. You already have. The words hung there, and I felt the world tilt slightly. She didn't look at me when she said it, she looked at the ground, at the stray leaves sticking wet to the pavement. Sorry, I muttered. Her head turned then, sharp, eyes catching mine. Don't apologize for existing. We sat in silence. The kind where your chest feels too tight for air. I noticed her hand gripping the umbrella, knuckles pale. I keep thinking, she said, voice breaking just enough to feel real, what if I let this go too far? What if it ruins everything I've built? Her eyes flicked toward me, raw, unguarded. I couldn't answer. My throat wouldn't let me. Instead, I thought of all the ways I had tried to keep myself from her, the missed steps, the pauses, the polite nods, and how each one had failed. You don't know what you're asking for, she whispered. I'm not asking, I said. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Her breath caught, almost audible. She blinked once, slow, like she was steadying herself. The silence swelled, pressing in from every side. She shifted closer, just slightly, the edge of her sleeve brushing mine. If I leaned in even an inch, it would be done. No taking it back. Her hand released the umbrella, fingers flexing open in her lap. The tiniest invitation. I felt myself moving, then froze. The street lamp flickered above us, buzzing louder. Neither of us moved. Neither of us dared to. And just like that, the moment held, balanced perfectly on the edge of something neither of us could undo. The morning after our walk, everything changed. She didn't answer when I knocked to return the umbrella she'd left on the bench. Her blinds stayed closed, no sound of the kettle or the radio she usually kept on low. For 2 days, it was as if she'd disappeared into the walls of the house. When I finally saw her again, it was in passing. She was coming up the driveway with a grocery bag in her arms, phone pressed to her ear. She caught my eye but only gave the briefest nod before slipping inside. I stood on the porch for too long after, holding the umbrella like it was proof the night had actually happened. Later that week, a new detail revealed itself, one she hadn't offered, one I'd never thought to ask. A man's voice echoed faintly through her half-open door as I walked by. Not loud, but distinct. I froze, not wanting to linger, but I couldn't help it. Just sign them, it's easier that way, the voice said. Her answer came quieter, but sharp at the edges. I said I'll think about it. The door clicked shut before I could catch more. Divorce papers, I realized. Not finalized. A whole life she was still disentangling from. The knowledge sat in my chest like a stone. After that, I pulled back. Stopped finding excuses to knock, stopped lingering near her door. I told myself it was the respectful thing, the adult thing. But the truth was Messier, I didn't trust myself not to read too much into every look, every pause. I'd walk past her window and see the glow of her lamp, a shadow moving across the blinds, and my mind filled in details I had no right to imagine. Sometimes I'd draft a text, "Do you need help with the groceries?" Or "I still have your umbrella," but the words always sat unsent, blinking against the screen until I erased them. One evening, I came home later than usual and saw her car wasn't in the driveway. Her window dark. The emptiness startled me more than her absence had any right to. I sat on my bed, shoes still on, staring at the umbrella propped against the corner of my desk. The same umbrella she'd held across her lap like a shield. I wanted to ask, where had she gone, who had she met, why had she pulled away so sharply after drawing me so close? But those weren't questions you could ask without exposing everything. The next morning, I walked downstairs, hand half raised to knock on her door. I stood there, listening for movement, for the clink of a cup or the shift of footsteps. Nothing. Just silence. I lowered my hand and left, the door still untouched behind me. It was late. I hadn't meant to stop by, but I found myself outside her door again, the umbrella still in my hand. The house was mostly dark except for the glow spilling from her kitchen window. I almost turned back. Almost. But then the door opened before I could move. She was standing there, barefoot, sweater hanging loose at her shoulders. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Just the hum of the refrigerator inside, the faint hiss of rain outside. "You still have that," she said finally, nodding at the umbrella. I lifted it slightly. "Thought you might want it back." She stepped aside, and I followed her in. The kitchen felt warmer than it should have. A single lamp on the counter lit the room, catching the steam rising from 2 mugs of tea. She poured me one without asking, sliding it across the counter like it was habit. We stood there, sipping in silence. Her fingers curled loosely around the ceramic, mine tapping against the rim. Finally, she spoke. "I'm not good at this. At letting people close." Her voice was low, almost swallowed by the hum of the fridge. "You don't have to explain," I said. But she shook her head. "I do. Otherwise, you'll think it's you." I set my cup down, pulse thudding. "And is it?" Her eyes lifted, startled, then softened. "No," she whispered. "It's me. It's everything I've been through. The papers, the neighbors, my son. All of it." Her shoulders slumped slightly, the kind of tired that wasn't about sleep. I wanted to reach out. Instead, I curled my hand against the counter, nails pressing into my palm. "You don't owe me anything," I said, though it scraped inside me to say it. She looked at me for a long time, long enough that I forgot to breathe. Then, with a quiet exhale, she said, "And yet, here you are. Still here." The words cracked something open in me. All the nights of unsent texts, the pauses on her doorstep, the almosts and nearlys, they all pressed forward at once. "I can't pretend I don't want more than this," I said, the sentence trembling at the edges. Her lips parted, eyes flicking down, then back up. "And I can't pretend I don't feel it too." The air between us felt fragile, like one wrong move would shatter it completely. She reached across the counter then, fingers brushing the back of my hand. Not a grab, not a pull, just a touch. Small. Human. Enough. I turned my palm, letting her hand settle into mine. We stayed like that, quiet, the rain soft against the windows. Finally, she smiled, not wide, not careless, but steady. A smile that felt like it had cost her something. "Okay," she said softly. And for the first time, it felt like enough. Time didn't change overnight. There was no sudden declaration, no sweeping gesture that made everything fall into place. What shifted was smaller, routine, comfort, the way silence no longer felt like something to escape. I started fixing things for her more often. Not just the sink, door hinges, a loose shelf, the radio dial that never stayed in tune. She teased me once, saying, "You're becoming my live-in handyman." I laughed, though we both knew it was more than that. She began leaving an extra mug out in the mornings, steam curling by the window at 8:47 a.m., the time I usually came down for coffee before class. Sometimes it was tea, sometimes black coffee, sometimes both, like she couldn't decide which I'd want. And when we walked in the evenings, we'd always end up at that same bench under the street lamp. No words about what it meant, no promises spoken. Just two people sitting, the buzz of the light above, her sleeve brushing mine. Her son visited once, briefly. I didn't meet him, though I saw him loading a suitcase into the car. She came back inside afterward quieter than usual, standing by the sink like she'd forgotten what she'd walked in for. I didn't ask. Just filled the kettle, set 2 mugs down, waited. Eventually, she sat across from me, hands wrapped around her cup like it was keeping her steady. "Seattle feels far," she said. I nodded. "I know." Her eyes flicked up then, soft but searching. And for once, she didn't pull away. We never called it anything. Not dating, not love, not a relationship. But there was a kind of rhythm to us now. Her sweater folded on my chair. My shoes by her back door. The umbrella still propped by the counter, never returned, never asked about. On Sundays, she'd make pancakes, flipping them too early so they came out lopsided. I'd joke about it, and she'd roll her eyes, but the smile lingered longer than the annoyance. Sometimes I'd catch her watching me, not with hunger or fear, but with something quieter. Like she was memorizing the fact that I was there at all. One night, much later, we sat on that bench again. The street lamp hummed, the air cool enough that our breaths showed. She leaned her head against my shoulder, light as a sigh. "Do you regret it?" she asked, almost too soft to hear. I thought about everything, the pauses, the silences, the missed knocks, the nearlies. And then the tea mugs, the shared walks, the way the house felt less empty now. "No," I said. "Not even a little." She smiled into my sleeve, eyes closing. And that was enough. Some stories don't end with fireworks. They end with a bench, a half-cold cup of tea, and someone finally choosing to stay.